I've got 6 o'clock by my watch, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Everyone that's willing to speak tonight, please sign in at the podium. Please sign in if you're going to speak tonight, so our attorney, Mr. Perkins, can swear you in.
That's over here, so you look at it once in a while.
Oh, sure.
I want to welcome everyone to the Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission meeting, April 9th, 2026.
Yeah.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes, pass that down to the chair. Everyone signed in to speak. You can stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you're going to make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? That includes reading. Thank you.
Please sign in to discuss the board.
Uh-oh, point of order.
Just make sure you say your name clearly so it gets recorded.
Okay. For the record, we have 2 commissioners absent tonight, Chair Mary Roby Singer and Commissioner Jessica Canfield. All right, our first order of business will be approval of March invoices. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Jesse,
Second.
Mr. Green, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of April 9th, 2026 agenda. I'm sorry.
12.
April 12th, 2026 minutes. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Stone,
I'll second.
Mr. Black. Now, approval of April 9th, 2026 agenda.
We need to vote on the minutes.
I'm sorry. Those in favor for the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
But the attitude of moving quickly, that's appreciated.
Thank you.
You combine all 3 of those into one motion.
Okay, now we'll entertain a motion for approval of the April 9th, 2026 agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Vest,
Second.
Mr. Jesse. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Items for postponement or withdrawal? Okay, nothing. So with that, we'll move on to our first item, which is old business, PDP 2026-10, UK Federal Credit Union preliminary development plan for bank located on Brayburn Road. Mr. Smith.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
First item of the night, preliminary development plan 2026-10. Proposal is for a preliminary development plan for a 3,133 square foot drive-in bank. The location is along Brayburn Road by the Shell on Lemons Mill there. Site acreage is 1 acre, resulting from a recent final subdivision plat. The existing zone is B4 Community Commercial. Surrounding zones are R3, R2, A1, B2, and R1C. And the application requests 3 waivers. Firstly, a 40-foot reduction in minimum distance between access points. Secondly, a change in placement of the required VUA tree screening, one per every 40 feet of linear boundary. And third, to waive the requirement for a 6-foot tall boundary fence when adjoining the A1. So seen here is the location of the development plan. Seen here is the zoning map. You can see the surrounding B4, B2, R2, R1C, and you can also see that A1 which is kind of the default zoning for McClellan Circle. Surrounding uses are pretty consistent with the zoning, low-scale commercial, and then low to high-density residential. So the project site, until very recently, was a 5.16 acre parcel with access upon Brayburn Road. And a subdivision plat was submitted alongside this and received ministerial approval in March. So the subdivision divided that original 5.16 acre parcel into 5 lots. And then as you can see here, up at the north parcel there in the red, Lot 1A is where this development plan will fit. So regarding the use and the traffic generation, that proposed use is again for a financial institution, credit union, / bank. And banks are listed as a permitted or intended use in the B4. And then seen there in that table, you can see the estimated ITE trips that this use will generate based on its square footage, and it will not meet our typical threshold of 100 or more peak hour trips to warrant a traffic study. Seen here is the development plan. Here it is a little bit zoomed in. And plan review. In the purple there, you have the main building and the drive-through canopy area. You have 3,130 square feet of general floor area, and that drive-through canopy is about 1,000 square feet. The proposed building coverage will be about 9.6% of the lot. They are proposing about 16,300 square feet of vehicular use area. Alongside that vehicular use area, they are proposing 22 total parking spaces, 2 of which are going to be ADA handicap accessible. They are proposing 1,994 square feet of interior landscaped area and 7 trees. And then they are proposing a total of 12,500 square feet canopy, or 28.8% canopy coverage. So the application meets all of our typical requirements aside from those 3 requested waivers. So that first waiver regards the distance or the access separation. So Article X 1000 Q2 of the subdivision regulations states that accesses on the same side of the street shall be at least 100 feet from center line to center line. And the plan that you can see with those red stars there, the center line of the existing shell and the center line of this proposed entrance, you have 60 feet of separation there between those 2 access points. And upon reviewing this, consulting with commission engineer, staff did come to the conclusion that the intent of this article is to manage access points appropriately, not necessarily to strictly prohibit all accesses that may be closer together than 100 feet. So for some context here, on Brayburn Road, you can see there the existing shell, that existing entrance. Here is a visual overlay. We have the 2 red stars there. You can see the existing center line of the shell entrance and the proposed center line of this development's entrance. And just to zoom out a little bit so we have full context of what Brayburn Road looks like, you have that nearest intersection with Lemons Mill Road in Brayburn to the north there, and that is about 200 feet removed from this proposed access point. And you have the access point for Amerson Apartments, about 600 feet south of this proposed entrance. And then about 850 feet south of this proposed entrance, you have that intersection of Brayburn and Amerson Orchard Road. So the article in question here regarding minimum driveway separation distance does specifically empower the commission to grant relief for shorter entrance distances. And staff does recommend approval of this waiver in the form of a 40-foot reduction of the minimum required distance between access points based on the following three findings here. 60 feet of separation is not an unreasonable circumvention of the requirement. With no nearby entrance points along the opposite side of the street, reduction in distance is acceptable in this case. And this reduction remains as an appropriate management of access points, which does satisfy the intent of the article. Moving on to our second waiver here. The landscape and land use buffer ordinance requires that when a vehicular use area adjoins any property, there must be a landscape buffer area of 5 feet with 1 tree per every 40 feet of linear boundary. And so this application does request relief regarding the placement of these trees, though these trees will still be provided. So you can see highlighted in those green circles there, the required trees and where they will be placed. They will be kind of clustered up to the top and the bottom of that vehicular use area boundary. They will not be placed in that increment of 40 feet along the boundary. So you can see there is kind of that narrow width between that proposed masonry wall and the adjoining property. You have about 5 to 7.5 feet there, which does give kind of a limited space for plantings. And you also have that proposed masonry wall along the boundary of this vehicular use area, which will provide that visual screening to some extent. So staff does recommend approval of this second waiver regarding the placement of the 1 tree per 40 feet of linear boundary, and that is based on the following findings. So firstly, the planned masonry retaining wall, being 4 to 6 feet in height, will provide the adequate visual screening. The minimum vegetation that's required by the article will still be provided. The space between the edge of the south vehicular use area and the south property boundary does not reasonably allow for the planting of trees. The site will exceed minimum canopy coverage and satisfy the general intent of the articles from which relief is sought. And the portion of the VUA for which relief is sought abuts the B4, and such intensive buffering may not be necessary where the zone is adjacent to itself. Moving on to our third waiver here. As you saw on the zoning map, the site does abut the, I'm going to put it in quotations here, the A1 zone. It is kind of a default zoning district for the right-of-way of McClellan Circle. It is not an agricultural use of any sort. But on a technicality, our ordinance does require a 6-foot tall boundary fence for development that is adjacent to the A1 zone. And so this fence would be required under the literal interpretation of the article. And you can see there in the green arrow stretching across there, that is the proposed legacy trail extension. And so this fence that's required would also to some extent inhibit the implementation of that. And so staff does recommend approval of this third waiver in the form of waiving that fencing requirement when adjacent to the A1, and that is based on the following findings. The A1 zone to which this property is adjacent is not an agricultural use. The fence would be incompatible in nature with the planned extension of the legacy trail. And lastly, the required 50-foot setback and 50-foot land use buffer would provide adequate degree of removal and screening for the development. So moving on to findings. Project site is a 1-acre parcel, zoned B4. Subdivision upon which this development plan is contingent was considered and approved as FSP 2026-09, and that was evaluated ministerially by staff under KRS 100-275. The development plan shows 3,133 square feet of general floor area with 4,195 square feet of total building coverage with that drive-through canopy that's also proposed. That is about 9.63% lot coverage, and that is well under the building maximum, or the maximum building coverage of the B4 zone. And the application proposes 16,383 square feet of vehicular use area. The proposed use of a bank or financial institution does align as an allowable by right use in the B4. Per ITE metrics, the proposal would not require a traffic study or generate a significant degree of new traffic. The development plan, aside from those 3 requested waivers, meets all other requirements of regulations, and staff does recommend approval of all 3 waivers. The development would satisfy the intent of the B4 zoning district. And then lastly, we have those 3 sets of findings for each waiver, and we can go back and revisit those if we need to. So based on findings and analysis, staff does recommend approval of the preliminary development plan for UK Federal Credit Union along Brayburn Road. And should the commission approve the application, staff recommends the following waivers and conditions of approval. We have that waiver for the reduction in the minimum required distance between access points. We have the waiver for the requirement of 1 tree per 40 feet of linear boundary to that south portion of the vehicular use area. And then lastly, we have that waiver of the 6-foot-tall no-climb boundary fence when adjoining the A1. So we have our standard conditions of approval for development plans, aside from 1 unique condition, and that is condition number 9, any and all conditions that may be imposed for the Amerson Farm subdivision. At this point, I'll open it up to any questions for staff about the application.
So what does it mean by the planned orientation limits impervious surface towards Brayburn Road as a reason for moving that entrance?
To my understanding, that was an engineering, I can't necessarily speak to the engineering logic behind that. I did consult with Mr. Krebs, and he said that that did have some, that did hold water.
Okay.
As a statement.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm not as well versed in engineering.
Of course, the time.
side.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Would you check with him? I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the commission? Audience?
Then I make a motion to approve
Yes, you can.
PDP-2026-110 UK Federal Credit Union for approval, yes.
I'll second.
Mr. Black?
Yes.
Mr. Jesse?
Yes.
Mr. Vest?
Yes.
Mr. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion carries.
Okay, our next item is PDP 2026-15, a preliminary development plan for a 3-story, 89-room hotel with associated parking and landscaping. It's at the property address 400 Outlet Center Drive, which is a B2 zone parcel of approximately 2.78 acres. The site is, or the area surrounding is largely developed with hospitality-based industries with some restaurants with drive-throughs, other hotels, as well as the outlet mall is in that general area, and tourism is right across the street. Right now it is a vacant parcel. Again, they are looking to put that hotel in, and there are 5 requests associated with this. In the report, I misprinted, unfortunately, so I'll clarify what that misprint kind of means now. Conditions 1, 2, and 3 are still remaining as previously written. Condition 4 was eliminated due to a change in their landscaping plan that just did not get reflected when I wrote the condition list out. And then I did need to add condition 6, which was regarding, or waiver 6, which has to do with the ag buffers requirement. Very similar to the case that we just heard, wherein the right-of-way of a road, specifically a state road, is getting that default ag zoning. And so under literal interpretation, we do need to add that and then waive it potentially, obviously at your guys' discretion. So this is the property here. A portion of it does adjoin the Outlet Center Drive kind of retailers in that general vicinity, and it is kind of at the terminus from where it goes from publicly maintained road, which is in kind of that lighter gray, to privately maintained road, which is in that darker kind of black color when you're kind of traversing south towards Harris Pike. This is the generalized layout. It is a flag-shaped lot, which will come into play for several of the requests of the applicant. A flag-shaped lot with a drive-through that is going to kind of come in, turn to the south, and then the building will be nearest to kind of that bottom portion, that black-topped parking lot area. And then their parking spaces will be kind of between the building and the middle, or the building and the driveway, and then there'll be some stormwater management kind of surrounding. I've used this to illustrate all of our variance or waiver requests, and I try to use colors. We'll be going through them numerically. The first of which is building signage waivers. They are a uniquely shaped lot. We'll get into it in a minute. Parking requirements are also being requested to be waived. The property perimeter and agricultural buffers, which is referenced as waivers 3 and 6. Waiver 4, which is no longer applicable, but for, again, clear transparency on the language. I didn't want to move the numbers around from what your guys' report said versus what the actual resulting number of waivers variances are going to look like. So I will reference it, but waiver 4 is not in play anymore due to the corrections to their plan. And again, it just being misrepresented on my report. I do apologize for that. And then waiver 5 is that interior island area ratio. Kind of starting with their signage requests. By right signage for buildings is based upon road frontages. And so only those signs which have direct facing onto a road frontage are allotted wall signage. Everything else is not permitted to have wall signage. So the areas identified in orange on the sides are the only 2 locations where wall signage would be applicable by right, with some considerations for what is defined as the primary and secondary. But otherwise, those are the 2 locations. The applicant is requesting to put them on the north face and the south face, or the longer faces of the building, which do not directly adjoin road right-of-way, but they do face kind of that traffic that is traveling north and south on the interstate, as well as internal off of the interstate. Putting it on kind of that short side of the building really eliminates the visibility of it unless you are directly parallel to it, in which you will have to turn your head 90 degrees, look at the sign and say, that's the hotel I want to go to, and then immediately turn back and then turn to the right to get off the highway. It creates kind of a precarious situation, and ultimately, staff does recommend in favor of it. This is a breakdown of their elevations, and this is kind of what the sign is going to look like. They are not requesting an intersite sign, which is a conditional use permit, which would be under review by the Georgetown Board of Adjustment. They believe in the letter submitted by the applicant that the building signage, given its height and kind of that open space in front of it with the parking lot being there, is going to provide enough sufficient space for them to not need an interstate sign, because the building will function as both the hotel and also the advertisement for the hotel. So ultimately, it's going to look something like that. Again, very limited in sign kind of impact on the site. It's not a very large sign. It does satisfy our requirements for minimum or maximum sign area is underneath that. And ultimately, staff does recommend in favor of this request for their building sign. I do want to note that they did also request a monument ground style or freestanding sign. However, that meets all of our letters and requirements of the ordinance, so I did not include that as an item of analysis so as to not create confusion or just to kind of speak longer than I had to. Waiver 2 has to deal with their request for a parking waiver. So the standard for a hotel or another transient kind of operation is 1 space per room plus 4 additional spaces for every 50 rooms, plus 1 space per staff, plus additional ones depending upon amenities. So amenities are like pools, fitness centers, conference rooms, and meeting rooms, and also restaurants and items like that. The applicant has stated that the operations of the hotel are exclusive. They do not operate with those amenities in mind. There's no pool, there's no restaurant, hotel. This is intended to be kind of an extended stay option for individuals who may be here for an extended period of time who aren't really wanting to utilize such services like a pool or an internal cafe. Their ultimate request is to just do 1 space per room plus 1 space per 3 staff. They propose only having 1 staff on the campus at any given point in time, and they have 89 rooms. So you're looking at 90 total parking spaces on the property. If you look at industry standards and what they see elsewhere, and as they've stated in their letter, as well as the staggered parking demand, where they're really just kind of seeing that extended kind of clientele, you're really not seeing a lot of parking turnover. In addition, staff has on file the ITE Parking Generation Manual, the 6th edition. It is published very recently, and it identifies that for a limited service hotel, which this would qualify as because there's really no other amenities besides just a place to lay your head at night, that you would need approximately 0.66 parking spaces per guest room given the low volume and turnover. And so kind of considering the request of the applicant, considering what would be an acceptable industry standard, staff advises in favor of this waiver request, again, to reduce the number of parking spaces by 8. Pretty much, again, just eliminating that 4 extra spaces for every 5 rooms requirement. This is their landscaping plan. So they propose landscaping along the kind of north side of the property here, following this driveway before cutting across, putting along the north side of their parking lot, putting on all the required dumpster screening and other items. They do propose some foliage around their building, just for aesthetic and just to have plantings there. They're more than welcome to do that. There's no requirement to put it around the building. And they also have it kind of going along this portion of the underside of the driveway that I just pointed out. This is also going to be the subject for several of our waiver requests, specifically kind of called out here. Waivers 3 and 6, I'll talk about first. Waiver 5 is, I'll talk about second. I'll speak to those 2 first because of their shared location. So our regulations state that a 10-foot wide buffer along the property boundary is required for properties which adjoin an arterial road which they do not access directly. These guys do not have a custom interstate exit, and so therefore we want to have that screening in there just to kind of protect those thoroughfares from cross contamination of lights and noise. The requirements are 1 tree per 40 feet of linear boundary and a 6-foot tall buffer planting. The agricultural buffering requirements is for a 50-foot wide buffer or building setback and a 6-foot tall no-climb fence. The applicant requests to move the 10-foot wide buffer 40 feet to the west, and then they will satisfy that building setback by nature of moving it to the west, and they'll have 1 tree per 40 feet, but they request not to utilize the 6-foot tall buffer planting nor the 6-foot tall no-climb fence, and instead propose retaining the existing mature trees and shrubbery that is located along I-75. When you're looking at the site, I did not go out and run on this. This is a grab from Google Earth. I swear I was safe. You can see kind of a pretty, the kind of natural kind of grade point is here, and then there's some tree planting or some existing trees which do kind of function as an optimal screening mechanism. Furthermore, there are several utility easements along that eastern boundary with the interstate. I have it. You can kind of see them in the photo here that I took this morning. They have overhead lines here. There's a gas pole marker here. This is a gas line here. So there's a lot of utilities that are traveling along the interstates. That is typical for these types of things. You just go where there's already naturally right-of-way that you can get quickly and easily. And the applicant does not want to put any heavy machinery over it, so they want to just leave the trees where they are, any existing trees. that are inside that utility area. Essentially say if the utility provider wants to pull it out, they can pull them out. But otherwise, we'd like to leave them there. And then they do propose installing that 1 tree per 40 feet, just again, on the inside of that, just for new plantings, kind of adding to the site canopy. I went out to the site, you can kind of see there's some grubby kind of shrubbery out there. Of course, they're not going to be impacting that 40-foot wide area, but there are some pockets of some trees that may just not really be there right now, or that can be easily eliminated, and that type of thing. But ultimately, they're going to try to keep as much of that as possible, just to kind of operate as that kind of existing functionality of that buffer. And so staff recommends in favor of the request for waivers 3 and 6.
I have a
Define-
question.
yes.
Question for you. Where that fence is at, that you took this morning, to the right of that, isn't there a state highway fence down in there somewhere beyond that?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's pretty tall, too.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly wearing outdoor boots and shoes, so I didn't really want to.
Yeah, but there is a fence there.
Yes, there is an existing thing.
Pretty tall fence. Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately, my photo didn't grab it, so I appreciate you referencing it. Our last waiver request is waiver 5, which is to their interior landscaped island areas. So the requirements are to have greater than or equal to 10% of the BUA as interior landscape area. Breaks it up, kind of operates as a diffusion of heat, and just kind of offers a kind of nicer amenity on sites. A lot of people have them, some people don't. We try our best to keep them around as much as we can. Ultimately, when you look at the total VUA on the site, you're looking at about 3,900 square feet of landscaping, and then the standard is 1 tree per 250 feet of interior landscaping provided on the site. Be represented inside of those interior island areas. The applicant requests instead to use the 6.5% of the VUA, or 2,500 square feet of interior landscape islands, and that they would provide 1 tree per 250 of interior landscaping provided, equivalent to 13 trees. So, as I kind of mentioned, the lot is a unique shape. It adds about 5,300 square feet of additional pavement area, which would otherwise not be expected or required just to get to the site. And so that's kind of artificially, or at least as the applicant states in their letter, it is artificially increasing their amount of impervious area and therefore increasing their amount of interior landscape island that they have to provide. Furthermore, there is a lot of kind of low spots and stormwater management that they're trying to keep out of. This shot really doesn't show it, but this area will become a stormwater management area, and there is some kind of sloping and some neighbors to the property or property owners did identify some concerns about some stabilization that may need to be done that the applicant may not be aware of as potentially a courtesy or just an FYI. However, there's a lot of kind of potential activity over there, so they're trying to keep out of those naturally really low areas that may have some existing challenges. And again, with their reduced amount of parking spaces, they've kind of identified a need. They want to just kind of be proportional. Finally, the property perimeter landscaping on the east side really reduces that area that they can really continue in that direction. And so they're just trying to keep everything here and be the most efficient that they can with their space. Ultimately, staff advises in favor of the request. That flag lot is a unique shape. Very few of these lots that function in hospitality settings are flag shapes. They're usually just real convenient squares. And in this instance, due to it being kind of an infill lot, it is not a real convenient square as I just described it. And so staff advises in favor of waiver 5. I do want to just briefly speak to their canopy requirements while I'm holding on this slide. They are going to preserve a bunch of trees. They are going to be adding some more trees. So ultimately, we don't have the numbers on what their exact tree canopy preservation is, but the applicant is aware of their requirements, and there are conditions accordingly that would ensure that the canopy requirement is met. It really just depends on how much you remove and then how much you keep, and then that you have to put in a certain percentage. Usually commercial sites, you're looking between 20 and 24% tree canopy, depending upon what trees you can save on a property. Ultimately, staff's recommendation is in favor of the request for the hotel at the property address 400 Outlet Center Drive. There are 5 waivers, so this is where my numbers are going to shift up. 1, 2, and 3 are the same 1, 2, and 3 on your guys' report. Condition, what was 5 is now 4, and condition that is added, which is condition 6 with that ag buffers, is now being moved to 5. So, kind of as I presented it, I have the little context clues in the italics underneath. I apologize again for having the misprint and not catching it before it went out to you guys, but I do want to just state for the record that it's all has been discussed in the presentation and unfortunately just is not represented in your guys' reports. It is represented on your conditions of approval though, should you guys move to approve the request. Those are the 5 waivers, and then there are 8 conditions of approval. There's really not a unique one that really pops out. These are typical ones, not 33, just 8. If there's not anything else, then I'm here for questions.
I have a question, just mainly for the record.
Mm-hmm.
The post-construction stormwater, can you explain who's actually responsible for that?
So stormwater management operations and maintenance agreements have to be filed between the owner and, like, the site operator and the city of Georgetown.
Okay.
And then they are monitored throughout, and performance is taken care of. And if it's identified that there's a violation of it, the city engineer and/or our office or another enforcement officer has the power to go out and ensure that they're draining properly. So we're seeing a bunch of trash, or we're seeing a bunch of other things. We would be going out and actually just enforcing it.
So the city of Georgetown wouldn't be on the hook if they created a problem or there was a problem that post-construction, that would be on the builder to fix it?
Yeah, per their agreement, like they're supposed to be, it's supposed to be operating and maintained. So if they are failing to meet the conditions of their operation and maintenance agreement that they struck between themselves and the city of Georgetown, the city of Georgetown would essentially, per their conditions, typically say, that's your responsibility, fix this, here's your deadline.
And then what kind of power does this commission, this office have if a problem does arise? A letter of what would happen? Like
During construction.
post-construction?
Post-construction, I'm going to look to Holden as our enforcement officer.
The only reason why I'm asking is we've had multiple problems with this throughout the city of Georgetown. I was just curious as to what would happen.
So the question is how do we address
Yeah, what would
a
happen
non-complying
for
entity?
post-construction?
Yeah, post-construction. So we have an enforcement procedure that's outlined in the KRS.
Okay.
Where essentially it starts with a notice of violation and then progresses from there from fines and just escalates from there. Like, are you looking for like the specific?
Now, so it's not just the city's responsibility, actually the planning office has
If it's
has
within
some
our
authority
authority, yes.
post-construction.
Yeah. You know, we take it on a case-by-case basis. Is there a specific issue
Well,
that you
how-
anticipate?
Well, how long, I'm just asking just for historic reasons.
Okay.
So how long, like post-construction, how long is that plan, like, once that stormwater plan's been approved, is that go out indefinitely, is it just for a certain period of time?
The operation and maintenance
Yes.
agreement?
Yeah. how
As
long?
far as I'm aware, it's as long as the use is in operation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Just want to make sure it's not all in the city, that's.
Okay.
That's,
Any other questions related to this case?
thank you.
I do want to, I was requested, speak to 2 items of note from adjoining property owners. So this is no longer going to be me speaking. This is an adjoining property owner who owns a hotel. He requested that I read this letter just to you guys, as first things to be aware of. He says, as documented in multiple geotechnical investigations for the property land lies within a karst terrain setting with mapped sinkhole and subsurface void susceptibility. When our hotel was constructed in 2018, we implemented extensive geotechnical design and construction measures to address karst-related risks and to ensure long-term structural stability and public safety. Based upon the findings of our prior studies, our site is located on the periphery of a high-risk karst zone, whereas the tract now being considered for development appears to coincide with that area of greatest sinkhole susceptibility and subsurface instability potential. Given these concerns, I strongly encourage the Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission to require a comprehensive karst-focused geotechnical evaluation for the proposed development. At minimum, this should include appropriate subsurface exploration, geophysical screening where warranted, and engineering recommendations addressing potential voids, raveling, and localized subsidence. Any design should incorporate proven mitigation measures, i.e. Subsurface stabilization, foundation systems suitable for karst, and construction phase monitoring consistent with the accepted geotechnical standards for karst environments. Our priority is ensuring that the proposed hotel is safe and constructed for occupants, workers, and the public. Equally important is protecting adjacent properties, including our own, from adverse impacts should future ground movement or soil or bedrock instability occur. So I just have that one.
And who is that from?
This is from a Mr. Bimal Patel. He is the president and CEO of Rolling Hills Hospitality. I did look it up. That agency does own the Home 2 Suites off of Outlet Center Drive.
Home 2 Suites?
Yep.
Is that the one directly north of where this would be? Okay.
There's like a vacant land parcel, and then it's directly on the other side.
And what is that letter dated?
He submitted the letter to me midday on Saturday the 4th.
Saturday 4th.
And I responded to it and kind of advised accordingly. Unfortunately, with the schedules for the schools
Yeah.
being out right now, he was unable to attend and requested that we speak on his behalf because he was unable to bring anybody else.
Thank you.
I do have another note from a different property owner. This one is more so just a summary from an email and a phone call that we've had previously.
Okay.
It was concerns that were brought up when the first time that this proposal was brought in I believe November of last year. The owner of I believe it is the Baymount by Wyndham, but I'm not entirely certain. I couldn't exactly read the photo when it was on Google Maps, and so I just hope for the best. He had referenced concerns about pre-existing restrictions on the site associated with potential deeds or parcels. And I have an email from our esteemed attorney, which states that the deed in reference refers to a specific lot, and this lot is considered not that same numbered lot. And so therefore, at least per the email that I have from Charlie, that restriction on the property is not applicable at this point in time. And I did want to do them the service of speaking to their concerns. However, at least as I'm going to keep gesturing at Charlie, at least as our attorney has advised, it would not be applicable in this instance. It specifically is kind of a restriction against other hospitality-based industries. But again, with our esteemed attorney's record and notes and everything like that,
Was not on this deed.
it's not associated with the property.
At one point, there were 2 lots for sale out there. Does this particular development contain both of those lots, or is there still another lot adjoining this one?
I believe there's still a second lot to the north of it.
I looked it up, they've been separated.
What?
I looked it up on PDA, they've been separated.
Yeah, they're separate.
So it's still there, there's still another lot? Thank you.
Yeah, there's still a for sale sign on one of the properties. So, those are my 2 public comments that I've received. I'm not sure if there's any other ones, but I did want to give them their kind of time in the sun
Yeah.
and speak as
Good.
best as I can to their concerns and their interests.
Has the applicant completed any type of testing or communicated with you anything regarding the property sinkhole
Sure.
capability?
Doctor, he's our attorney for the applicant on record.
Harold Sims, attorney in Georgetown, representing Grace Development Company. Grace Development is an umbrella company that they have an engineering section, they have a construction section, and a development section. And I don't know the answer to your exact question. I will know for the record that both of the public comments come from area competitors in the very area. I can assure you that the standard practice for a development of this size and this cost would certainly take into consideration the potential for subsurface issues that would go in, and I can't imagine that Grace and the size and the fact that they have that kind of engineering team in-house would let that go. If it's, I would imagine that sort of engineering and development would be part and parcel of their normal development plans. And certainly, I will bring it to their attention that there were karst issues raised tonight, and they'll look into it. But I can't imagine that a development of this nature would go into this type of project and this type of expense without having some assurance that the surface that they were building on was capable of handling this, and if they needed to make adjustments for issues, they would do so.
Would it make sense to simply postpone this until we actually see an official report concerning this issue? Because that is always been an ongoing issue in different locations. Doesn't mean that it's not going to go forward, it just means we'd like to see a report, something in writing.
I guess my concern about the nature of the report that's been submitted is that we have no data. There was no information submitted other than we were concerned about this if they had data, it would have been nice if it had been brought to the table and somebody that was concerned enough about this data would have shown up. He raises a hot button issue, but we have no, they're asking you to accept it carte blanche, and we don't know anything at all about what a competitor has raised as an issue for this project. I'm suggesting to you that an appropriate way to handle this is when, as the project comes in, and they submit their plans for approval by the commission, those issues could be raised. It's very easy for somebody to say, well, I'm wondering about the karst conditions because there's a lot of karst property in this area, but we don't really know, is he specifically talking about this property? There is but between this location, my applicant, my client's location and the project you're looking at tonight and the hotel that he's speaking about that he owns, there is another lot that's in between the two of them. If he had data, if he had tests, if he had graphics, why weren't they submitted with his letter other than just to, I'm a little bit skeptical of a competitor raising an issue like this without offering any data to back it up.
But your client does not have anyone, an engineer or anyone here that could address our questions about this? They were in constant contact with staff that did a very thorough job, I thought, addressing questions, answering the questions that were raised by staff. They got back to them line by line on every one of I think 2 or 3 pages of technical review questions. They took time and answered each one of them and submitted them in writing to the staff on time so that they could be reviewed. Nothing was raised in the TRC about karst issues in areas, and it's something that is not, this isn't the first time this commission has heard about karst issues before. It's just amazing that right at the last minute before this is before this commission, it's raised by a competitor, and that they don't offer anything other than the hot button issue that there may be a karst problem here. If he had the data that he's speaking about, why wasn't it brought forward? If we could have been prepared with engineers to answer a karst question, it wasn't raised by anybody prior to now. We go through a very extensive technical review process prior to this time. So are you saying, to your knowledge, has been no engineering done?
No, certainly there's been engineering done.
Are you saying the engineering study addresses? Are you saying the engineering study that your client's done addresses this issue already? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'd say that I don't know that they've done a karst study, but I'm saying that I do not think that they would start to build a hotel on property that they are on surfaces that they have some suspicions of. They may have very well done it. it was never requested. It wasn't part of what we needed. We weren't asked to provide that information. And certainly, I don't know that anybody else was asked to provide it when they built out there. When you look at, we go to a technical review committee meeting and nobody asked for that information, we didn't provide any information on it. That doesn't mean that my people don't know about it prior to beginning to build.
Is it, Elise, is it possible to follow up with you?
So I can, two parts of this, I'm gonna pull my little exhibits out. If you guys are able to look at the first page of the project, unfortunately I did not put it as an item in my slide. I tend not to use the grading one, it's busy really quickly. But if you look at the first page with the grading on it, there's an area identified as stormwater management area kind of on the north side. And then if you continue kind of looking to the top of the page, you can see kind of what appears to be that kind of depression. And while a little piece of it may be on the site itself, this is just an elevation thing. So again, my untrained eye is kind of identifying that it may not truly be on this site in its entirety. However, I did also pull up our regulations regarding environmental protection and environmentally sensitive areas, which sinkhole, karst activity areas, springs, outcroppings, et cetera, do qualify under. The requirements are to, in the construction plan, information shall include specific location, extent, and boundary of environmentally sensitive areas or steep slopes features, methods used to determine the extent of the features, and proposed remediation if applicable. Additional information regarding protective measures during construction as applicable shall be included as part of construction plans. A sub-item of that is the examination of sinkholes, springs, and other similar features shall be completed by a licensed geotechnical engineer. The Planning Commission shall require the geotechnical engineer to submit a complete report of the findings, proposed remediation, and verification of remediation, i.e. the certification of inspection of the remediation materials and construction standards. 2 copies of the study, including any remediation methods, shall be submitted to the commission engineer for record and review and record keeping, and verification and certification of any remediation methods are required prior to final development plan or subdivision plat approval.
So that's the thing, being a preliminary plan, we could go ahead and put something in there that
That needs to be done?
that we could say we're okay with this plan as is long as that's done.
Yeah, it needs to be done.
There you go.
That's always done though. Anytime they build something, they have to go through the regs on it. I mean,
I think that, if I'm not mistaken, at least this is part of what, I mean, if this site stuck out as having those issues, I would think that would have been something Ben would have brought to our attention earlier. Certainly, as we submit plans, we have to, it sounds like you're saying that as we submit our construction plans, we have to address these issues as part of the reg. So it's going to be addressed by us as well as anybody else that's developing as part of the planning commission's requirements. When we submit construction plans, we have to address environmentally sensitive issues. We're not going to do any more than, we're not going to do any less than anybody else is required. I think this was a hot button issue by a competitor to try to get us off track. We have to address these issues with Planning Commission when we submit our construction plans that they will review as an engineer review. And now I'll certainly will be telling them that they can anticipate some review of the environmentally sensitive requirements of the Planning Commission regs, particularly as it relates to karst problems in the area.
Yeah, that's the question, as long as it's addressed and we know what's happening.
I think that's part of the normal planning process as we go forward.
What the excerpt that I read is from our subdivision and development regulations. So condition of approval 1, which states that all applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and landscape land uses should be satisfied, would be going forward. They would be expected to do that. Of course, you guys are more than welcome to make a sub-condition. In this instance, it would be number 9, because our last one is 8, to specifically call it out. And I don't know if that would be an issue for you to have a specific call-out condition.
If I might suggest, that actually kind of confuses things. When they're required to do something and then we put extra conditions on that say pretty much the same thing, that's confusing.
As long as make sure.
Step sheet, you know, the steps they've got to go through to get a final development plan approved include this. It includes it every time. So if we put another condition on it that says about the same thing, what does that mean? What's the difference? There is no difference, so we don't really need another condition. It's already in the regs, and in fact, it's already dressed up there.
But when could we, but if we decided we want to do that, we could.
Oh, you certainly can.
So, question is, so when we could anticipate seeing this official report? When would that come into play? How long would that be?
I would anticipate that my client will move forward with plans to actually start to put their plans together for construction, and then they will be submitted to the planning staff for review as a part of their construction plan approval prior to asking for approval of final development plan, which will be in place before they start construction.
I would just like to see that full report when it's done. Thank you.
I'll make a note to.
Once again, I think that's part of the normal process, is that that's gonna be reviewed, and it may be that the reason nothing was brought up like that, because it takes place after the preliminary and as part of the regs for approval of the construction plans and the final development.
But the other thing is, you know, we can't automatically assume that the adjoining property owners are just issuing this for no reason. It could be there is a real reason. So we want to also, don't want to just say that there's nothing to this.
And it could
Just
be
want to see
there's
the
not
report.
too, though.
That's what I
See what I'm
said.
saying?
Could be, but we need
Because
to
you
know.
got two competitors saying, well, this land's no good, don't let them build there. To me, it seems kind of odd, but that's just me.
But it may not be either, so.
Yeah, it may not be unfounded stuff. That's what the study is for.
What it's for.
That's what our requirements are for.
I think they are aware, and I think part of their plans indicated that they're concerned about avoiding areas where they know that there's issues. They've already indicated they wanted to stay out of some areas and will move things around to protect those areas. So I think all that will be part of the review process as we move forward.
Yeah, I think all
I
that's a
think that
good
Hilton
thing.
is a very responsible company. They're not gonna try to come in here and build on a sinkhole.
It just,
Wow.
you know, it does have like that 50-story building in New York City that's uninhabited now because it's leaning because it was built. So that's all we're trying to do is just make sure.
I understand, and I think you've got regs that are gonna protect that already.
Yeah.
I was about to say, yeah. So are there any more questions from the commission?
Just make sure you make a note of that. We-
Yep, I'll make a note to let Ben know that that is something that you're interested in seeing.
Anything else, Mr. Sims?
Mr. Chairman, I think the project as presented by staff tonight has been thoroughly reviewed, plenty of back and forth between staff and the applicant. They at least did a very excellent job of going through the requested variances. I believe that they all make sense for this project. It is somewhat unique in it, the way it's laid out in the flagpole direction that requires a different way in. So the variances at least 3 of the variances lend themselves directly to the flagpole nature of the lot. And I believe the project has met the requirements of the subdivision regs and will continue to, the applicant will continue to have to do that to move forward. And I urge the commission's approval of this plan and the variances as requested. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience?
I have one more question.
1 second, we've got one more question up here. Go ahead.
Back to the parking issue that we talked about the other day. So if they do anything different with this business and it changes its business plan after it's built, and it's under parked. Okay, they can't change, can they go in there and add a little, can they change part of the interior to convention center and change it without?
There's always an option to add parking to sites as needed. We see them.
But if they do that, say they, I'm talking about, if they don't build anything extra, they just change the interior where it is more of a convention type site, and they've got this, we would have no say-so in it, or we would have say-so in it at that point in time.
Or needing more parking.
So if,
Yeah.
If they create like a meeting space or something like that on the interior.
Because,
yeah, I can,
yeah.
I understand what you mean.
Yep.
This is an explicitly, as I've stated in my, that's why I use very explicit recommendations from staff. It is explicitly for a 3-story, 89-room building. If they add a meeting space, if they add another story, if they add more rooms, that is outside of the scope of what they've been approved for, and so they will have to come in for at least some form of minor review or a major review if they need more waivers or
Right.
variances.
Okay.
So I try to be very explicit in how I write everything.
Yep.
So that there is a very
Yes.
clear line forward.
Yes. Yeah, your reasons for giving the parking all made sense, that fit in that box with what they're
Yeah.
trying to do.
So if they wanted to come in and they say, oh, we're gonna add a cafe to this thing, then we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, well, you're adding this cafe, how much space does that need to add? What arrangements can be made? That type of thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on that issue relates to the business plan of this hotel. Obviously, Hilton is a big hotel, and they've got all kinds of hotel projects and different varieties. This Live Smart Studios Hotel is basically going to be Hilton's entry into the market for the extended stay hotel model. From what the plan, little handout that I was going to give you, that I don't think is necessarily important now. They have 60 of these studio hotels already in development. There are about, I think, 8 or 10 already that are around the country, and this is one of several that they're working on in this area. And so I don't think this is something that they just put together for Georgetown to try to compete with other extended stay hotels. Hilton is evidently, they've launched an extended stay portion of their brand in this plans, and I think this is being intended to be built as an extended stay hotel and operated that way. It would be built with those things, and their model is to try to use this as their entry or their version of an extended stay that doesn't have the conference rooms, the meeting rooms, the restaurants. The rooms are all more, they're bigger and more spacious. They have some in-room restaurant, or they basically have mini kitchens in all the rooms. So it's not really set up for to be a meeting space or a conference type hotel as the full service hotels are.
Any more questions from commission? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dan Holman, Georgetown. I'll just make a quick question related to this, the environmental concern. So, it was submitted by a competitor, but the competitor may be someone who's reviewed it, trying to find something wrong. So it's not necessarily unfounded. They might have come, they're actually looking, and they might have come up on a valid issue. But just looking at the elevation, it does look like that this would be a sinkhole. Like the stormwater management area is a sinkhole. So one thing you all don't have tonight, you don't have the planning and zoning engineer to comfort you about all this. And then a portion of the sinkhole does sort of go onto the property. So one option, would one option be, because often you all do the preliminary plan, but you don't see the final plan, could you all request, since this is a literal sinkhole in the area, that this issue come back to you all, just to make sure that the environmental concern was dealt with appropriately?
Is there some way we can see what you've got on your phone?
I think it's from the, it's from
About the
the
original
packet.
picture. Okay.
Yeah.
So this one kind of has a system fairly where you can see, this doesn't include the grading plan, but there is kind of these very light lines here kind of opting out. And this is kind of a low spot, which is what I was kind of referencing on one of your guys' sheets, at least the first one. But it does appear to be off-site, it may touch it. Again, that technical study is really going to identify the location of it. I cannot speculate to why an adjoining property owner came in and submitted a comment or requested that a comment be read. It may be just because he cares and he's just like, hey, this is something you gotta be aware of. Could be something else. I can't speak to why, what the motivations were for it. I can speak, however, to our regulations, which are going to protect the public safety and establish very clear routes forward to ensure that everything is studied to the highest level and the site is constructed with consideration of any environmental considerations.
Elise, can you go back to your map and show me where the closest line is to that hotel property? Where it's more of the sinkhole area, whatever.
So, this street.
Yes.
So, the kind of natural light grading kind of shows here, ramping up, and then it kind of inches closer, and then in our last one, it kind of is this area here.
Okay.
So it's about kind of that mid-ish point, if you're considering from this point to this point, it's right about that midpoint.
It's still within their property line, but it's not on their construction line.
It is not on the property line.
It's not on the property
The
line.
property line, yeah, sinkholes do radiate. And so the property line goes from here, following this area here, and then coming up. This line is just an indication of the length of the property line outside of the utility easements. It is not the property line in this instance. The property line is down here.
But within their property line, inside the property line, there is a sink level
There is
area,
a-
but not close to where the construction is. Is that right?
There is like this property does slope downwards towards this kind of middle point here, but there's no indication that this is specifically a sinkhole.
Okay.
Is it a sinkhole or not?
I can't speak
Well,
to that, I'm not
that
into
is the
technical
question. So what we can tell here is that obviously there's a depression to the north of the property there. That depression radiates out in multiple directions, heads towards, is that I-75 over there as well?
Yeah.
Heads over there too. What we do know is that we have regulations in place that will make sure that we review this issue prior to final development approval. At this time, the applicant can speak for themselves, but we haven't heard anything yes or no, whether it's a sinkhole or just a depression or maybe just some other geological feature. But you're aware of it and you intend to comply with our regulations.
They certainly will comply with all the regulations and will have to submit all the data that you request. Plus, it's very interesting that they, from a development standpoint, that's a great deal of property on site that could have been used to expand the hotel and have more rooms and make it larger, but that they obviously wanted to stay away from that area. And my guess is as we move forward, as we comply with your rules, we'll understand better about what's beyond that site. And I think you'll see this push forward for a reason because maybe there are issues on the other side of our property line.
Still considering
Radiate towards our property line, we don't go further, but that's why we have regulations in place to examine that as the construction plans come forward.
Dan, did you have anything else? Yeah.
So yeah, they clearly, as you just mentioned, are scared of that feature, and they're trying to stay away from it.
Let me simplify things. No country boy in me, sinkholes are not on top of the hill. That place on top of the hill, Holden said there's a depression there. That ain't a sinkhole.
So as Holden said, we don't know if it is a sinkhole or not. So yeah, just a suggestion would be, go figure all this stuff out when the engineer is here to talk to you all. So just a suggestion would be bring this back so you all get to review this aspect. Just check off on it on a future agenda at some point to make sure this really was handled adequately. Because, frankly, sometimes.
But Dan, that's what we just asked for a few minutes ago.
So would that come back to a future agenda item? Or would you just be emailed about it?
So Elise has already said she's going to note that part, and we know that item number 1 on the waivers covers that. So there's nothing they can do at this point to contradict what's already
I
there.
mean, would you all have, would you all have the option to request that the final development plan comes back before you all, at least briefly, for you to check off that one issue, you're comfortable it was handled adequately? Is that an option that you all have to request?
That's a good point that you just
To
made.
actually bring it back to the public
Yes.
meeting?
Doesn't mean that we can go forward and vote for this, but like we said, these questions have to be answered before it's built anyway. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Or you're saying one step further, to make sure it comes back to us.
It comes back to
see
you
that
publicly so
report.
everybody knows there's a chance.
Is that possible, Holden?
So, I'll try to find a middle ground on this.
Okay.
Staff would not advise this comes back for another vote before final development approval. For a wide range of projects,
Okay.
this body votes on preliminary approval, and then for final approval, our staff reviews, including our engineer, who did submit comments through TRC related to this development, and then we handle it from there. At the very bottom of our agendas is typically that space that's left open, updates of previously approved projects and agenda items. If the staff is willing, and if it's the planning commission's desire to see kind of what that report ultimately looked like, we'd be happy to come back and just, as a matter of course in the agenda, update you once we receive that. Now, it is important to, again, realize that after preliminary approval, which is all this is at this time, is a preliminary approval, the applicant has 2 years to move forward to final development with the option of a 1-year extension. So I don't know what the applicant's speed that they're looking to pursue on this project is, but we will, if it's desired of the planning commission, we can flag this, bring it back just as a general update as a part of the agenda.
I would appreciate you doing that,
Okay.
based on a number of reasons.
Everybody needs to understand, on this construction end, this is a commercial property. There is so much red tape and so many things that has to be approved that this body here won't even see. And that's part of it. What you're wanting to know is a lot of that. So I think we're trying to raise an issue that doesn't need to be raised, because it's going to be took care of through the process of the construction, of all the approvals and all that. That's just my personal opinion, but
It
that's
wouldn't
how it
hurt
works.
us to see it, though.
That's up to you. Back to you, Joe.
So I'm hearing that you're trying to not approve this tonight?
No, to move forward with it, but have them come back like we said in this report.
Do we need to request a formal condition that we get that on a future agenda, or can that just,
I think she just adds that to,
She said she would add it, but it's already included.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with our director's statement that a condition that it comes back explicitly as like an agenda item called out in its own right.
But that's just the report comes
Yeah.
back.
But we can, as Holden has stated, bring it back under like items previously approved, as kind of whenever something like that comes up, just be like, here is an example, here's the geotechnical report, as per your guys' request, for consideration review, that type of thing,
yeah.
so.
I just think that it's just prudent on our part, even though it may not change anything, nothing may needs to be changed. But I'd like to, but we're not gonna uphold it. No, I'm not for it. Based on what I know now, I would not go forward with it. But I wanna see the report.
Okay, yeah, I have a note for it, that upon receipt, we'll make, sure to bring it to you guys. If you guys don't hear about it for a little bit, you can go bother Doc at his office and ask him where it is. But, I'll make a note for that, and then when we get to whatever point where that is submitted, we will just have it available for you guys to review.
Yeah, thank you.
So that does not need to be included in the motion.
I don't think it's entirely.
That's just an
but I'm
instruction
also
to
not
staff
gonna-
to bring it back.
Yeah,
These are conditions of approval that actually go to the applicant.
okay,
Yeah, yeah.
all right. So if there are no more questions,
So just to clarify, will that be just an email sent to the commissioners, or will that be publicly mentioned in the meeting at some point?
If it's on the agenda, it'll be in the public meeting.
Okay, just to clarify.
But thank you for,
I'm just trying to figure out, is this going to be required of every applicant that comes forward in the future, we're gonna do this each time.
This is just, he's gonna bring the report back. This doesn't really have anything.
Doesn't change anything that they have to
This will have
do.
already submitted the report, it will have been reviewed, and then they'll get a copy of it, just
Yeah,
so you can
that's
see
it.
how the process works.
That answers my question.
Very good.
We're not changing the procedures.
No.
All right.
That's why we've asked all these questions.
So at this point, we'll entertain a motion, and remember, there are 5 waivers now, and the 8 conditions of approval. So if anyone wants to make a motion, we'll hear it.
Ron, I make a motion that we accept what they've said to the commission, and that the engineers and so on find something wrong, and we can discuss that later.
Okay.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Stone, a second by Ms. Adair for approval.
Can we include in that motion based on staff's report and staff's recommendation?
Good.
Good, thank you.
So we have a motion by Mr. Stone, approved by Ms. Adair on PDP 2026-15 Live Smart Studios. Are you going to be able to translate that motion, the 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's reflected on the conditions.
Yeah.
of approval,
And-
I would probably say
Number
it's
1.
presented in the presentation itself.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good with that, Charlie?
Yep, we're good, yep.
All right. Now we'll take a vote. Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Black,
No.
and the chair votes yes. All right, you want to come up and see Mr. Perkins?
No, keep asking. Keep asking.
Now we'll turn it over to
Why
the
you're
Director Fleming.
That's why you're here.
So the next item that we have are 2 public hearings, one related to accessory dwelling units and another related to cluster developments in unincorporated Scott County. I'll wait till Mr. Perkins finishes. I was going to ask if we can open that.
Public hearing is now open.
Okay. So these are 2 items that were previously addressed by this body in the February meeting and voted for approval. There have been no substantial changes to what was previously considered. However, following the February meeting, I had a meeting with the judge executive as well as several members of staff from WEDCO, and they asked this body to revisit the issue specifically as it relates to septic systems. And so what we've done as staff is we provided a new version of the draft proposal. All the changes are highlighted in your packet. The changes are twofold from what you saw in February. One, it reflects the changes that this body requested themselves, changing the reserve acreage from 40 down to 25. And the others are related to the updates that WEDCO requested. And so what I'd like to do very quickly is go ahead and cover ADUs, because I believe, again, this is probably the more simple of the 2 ordinances. The only change that took place in the ADU ordinance was a change, it's on page 2 of 4, under what was previously water and wastewater disposal. That now just has to do with wastewater. Again, in conversation, turns out the water thing isn't that important. If they want 2 lines, they can have 2 lines, as long as, again, it's supported. And then and that might actually make it easier in the future if they were to subdivide because they have more than 10 acres. The second half was changed to accessory housing shall not be permitted unless the sewage disposal facilities are adequate for the number of bedrooms and meet all applicable local or state health department requirements. A large part of the conversation that I had with WEDCO was informative in nature. essentially I got, again, not an expert on WEDCO's requirements, but I got kind of the quick update. Essentially, if you take two dwelling units, accessory or primary, and you combine into one septic system, that is a different classification of septic system, something that's called a cluster system. It requires a more extensive level of review, typically handled at the state level. And so I just want to say that is not specifically a planning commission requirement or a planning commission regulation, but rather as our community begins hopefully taking advantage of these accessory dwelling units, they need to be aware that for local review, it's very likely they're going to have separate septic systems, one for the primary and one for the accessory dwelling. If they want to combine them for some reason, that will likely be reviewed at the state level. That was the only change that was made to the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. Other than that, it's still one ADU per parcel, everything that we talked about in February. Does the Planning Commission have any questions related to accessory dwelling units? Okay. Then I'll move on to where a majority of the changes were made, and this is for the cluster developments. Again, what we're looking at here is a picture of a standard subdivision right now in Scott County. 5-acre tracts, one dwelling unit per 5 acres. We're proposing amendments to our cluster development regulation. And so if you're starting on page 8 of 11, that's where the highlighted area starts to kick in. And so the first one that you see is preserved acreage tracts, maybe no smaller than 25 acres. That is in direct response to the decision of this planning commission at the February meeting. The next section relates to the contiguous nature of the preserved acreage tracts. So we're still recommending a minimum of 50% preserved acreage, but then we say the preserved acreage for the entire cluster subdivision is not required to be contiguous, but must be set aside in increments no less than 25 contiguous acres each. And so, again, at the discretion of the Planning Commission, it was recommended that we don't need all the preserved to be together, but we need to be a minimum of 25-acre chunks, so that's what we've provided here. This was probably the biggest request that WEDCO made in our conversation. As we go to some sort of cluster development, the space on which that a septic system can be placed is obviously less than on a 5-acre tract. And so they had real concerns that as the neighborhood matures, the likelihood that storage sheds, pools, anything that's going to affect the site besides just the house and the driveway, can it begin to encroach on the preserve area for that septic system. And so what they requested is that at time of final plat, we will show the septic area where it is installed, as well as a 100% preserve on the plat, and they indicate that those areas are no-build areas. Now, this should, again, flag somebody at some point when they go in to get a building permit or they go in to get some sort of other approval on the property that they can't encroach in that area. If, for some reason, that area is encroached, then again, at least we've done our due diligence. We've put it out there the best that we can to prevent that from happening. And so that is the updated E section there. The final plat for any cluster development must depict the area of all septic system installations as well as a 100% preserve area. Both septic system installation areas and preserve areas must be noted as non-buildable areas on the plat.
Holden?
Yes.
When you say non or preserve area, you're talking about an
Septic.
equal area to replace it
Yes.
if the first one fails.
Yes.
This isn't part of your reserve.
No.
This is
On
sewer,
the
this
lot.
is septic tank.
It's a septic. We should probably clarify septic.
Yeah,
preserve.
that, I didn't think, I thought that was
They're
big.
field lines or what?
Yes, yeah.
The lines.
That's nothing new, that's what it's always been.
Yeah.
Okay, we clarified that for cluster developments containing 100 or more lots, accel, decel lanes, turn lanes, and secondary access points will be required. On page 9, this was again out of conversation at the February Planning Commission meeting. The lot width of preserved acreage tracts shall be no less than 100 feet at the narrowest point. As we draw up these preserved tracts, we really do want them to be usable. We don't want them to neck down below 100 feet. The other one, this is actually just a relocation, but it's important for the community to know. No preserved acreage tracts created through cluster development shall be eligible for agricultural conditional uses as defined in section 4.12 of the zoning ordinance. Such tracts are not eligible for consideration of conditional use permits by the Board of Adjustment. So when we preserve this tract, only those allowed uses by right can go on that preserved acreage. There's a number of conditional uses in the ag zone. This is not the area for that. And then this is the other topic of conversation with WEDCO. And this is O, preserve acreage may be used. This is talking about the preserved tract now. Preserve acreage may be used for septic systems serving the cluster lots of the development contingent upon the following. And so I'll grab the pointer here. Let's get forward. As these cluster lots get smaller, we're going to go ahead and use this one as an example. This is just boxes, but I want to kind of get the point across. With a half an acre lot, it is highly unlikely that we'd be able to locate a septic system to serve that house as well as a 100% reserve on that property. And so what we've tried to do is make it possible for a cluster system of some sort to be located on the preserved acreage that would serve the cluster lots, thereby preserving more acreage for agricultural use, but also providing for the septic systems of the lots here. Now, this would not be an ideal layout for something like this. You'd like to see kind of a surrounding of the preserved lot, but it's just understand smaller lots get the harder it is to fit everything. We want to make an allowance to move that septic infrastructure off of the half acres or other small lots where it's appropriate into the preserved acreage. Now, having said that, we only want that to happen if we can do two things. Number one, we have to be able to maintain and service that septic system. And so that's contingency number one. The location of the septic system in the reserve area must be recorded as non-buildable sewer easement on the final plat. So we've got to call out where that infrastructure is at. We got to preserve it, and we got to make sure that people have the ability to go and service that septic system. The second part, though, because what we don't want to do is say, well, we preserved all this acreage, but then it's encumbered and prevents the full use of that property. And so what we said is the second contingency is the developer shall increase the acreage of the reserve area in an increment of 1 acre for every acre utilized by the septic system. Calculation for this requirement will always be rounded up to the nearest whole number. And so if they've got, again, let's pretend that we've got a 100-acre tract, and they want to build all at half acres lots. That basically means they're going to develop 25 acres for housing. It's just going to give them 50 lots. 25 acres for housing, and they're going to have 75 acres of reserve. That 75 acres is well in excess of the 50%. And so any acreage that was, encumbered by the septic system can't be putting that reserve below 50%. And so in this example, you would still have more than 50% preserved acreage that's not encumbered by the septic systems. And so those are the only changes that staff has proposed at this time before trying to go back to fiscal court. Are there any questions about septic systems?
I got a question about
Yes.
this whole ordeal.
Yeah.
The main reason of doing this was to preserve farmland, correct?
Farmland and open space.
Yes.
I'll put those
Okay.
together.
Now, if you do anything on that preserved land, it's non-farmable as far as septic systems go.
Sure.
I mean, if you put a septic system on it, it's null and void for the farm guy. Is this the right approach, is my question.
So, again, obviously I believe it is, otherwise I wouldn't have wrote it down.
Yeah,
But,
I'm talking about for everybody, I'm saying, because it seems to me like here we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, to me.
and this is where I'll talk again about kind of the math that we ran to kind of imagine this. If you have a 50% reserve requirement, that reserve percentage only goes up once you get below 1 acre tracts. Again, if you were to develop the whole thing with our current ordinance at half-acre tracts, you're going to preserve 75%. It's that extra preserve, it's that extra acreage that I think justifies using some of the land to put the septic systems off-site. If we have to put them on-site, again, those lots are going to go up in size, and you're going to overall, I think, preserve less total acreage. And so that's, again, where, we say farming, agriculture, but there is a component of open space which is valuable too. And that would still be there. But I understand exactly where
So
you're going.
basically, you got 75 acres that you're preserved, 25 is gonna be for the additional.
Well, hopefully not 25,
But
hopefully it's
I'm just
10 or something like that.
hypothetical.
Yeah,
And then the other 50 will still be farmable.
yes. Yeah, that's exactly,
Is that right?
that's exactly correct.
Okay.
And the placement of that will be looked at to make sure it's the most efficient way of doing it,
Yeah,
not just sticking out in the middle of your 50.
Yeah.
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 So they'll still end up with more farmable land otherwise that we would not have. That,
Well, not more, just,
And the only time the acre to acre counts is when it's the 50%, right? So like, where you have to add an acre to
Yeah.
preserve. That's
Yeah,
the only
if-
time that kicks in. Like the 75, it didn't matter, but if it was to
Yeah.
50/50.
If it's
lot
50/50
size,
and they wanted to put septic over there,
Yeah.
then you have to go up an extra acre.
I'm with you.
clear as mud. Clear as mud.
I can take another crack at it.
Well, I can say clear as nothing else, but I can't say the word.
Okay, other than that, there were no other changes compared to what this body voted on in February. Okay. Any more questions that staff can answer? Okay. I'm sure the public has some comments.
You think?
Yes.
Can't use that land, it's reserved. You can't use that land when it's reserved. Septic gravel,
It's
go
done.
on.
It's done.
Well, mow it.
That's the whole story.
We know that.
Does the public have any comments or questions about preserves?
Cluster development.
George Cornett, I've been following it all the way, and I think Holden did a good job with it, and I'm for it. One thing I mentioned is, there's a couple examples that come to mind where we've got these sewer plants off the site. Coal Ridge is a cluster development out there where the effluent, the septic tanks, by the way, are on the side of the acres, and then the effluent, or the water, goes into a lagoon. So you got one out at Coal Ridge, you got another one at Victoria Estates, it's been there forever. Again, you got the septic tank on site, the effluent goes into and the question I've got is who's gonna be responsible for things? In the case of Victoria Estates, the HOA is, and out in Oak Coal Ridge, I think it's also the HOA, so I don't know, Holden, is that responsibility, Holden, part of your thing, or?
So the last requirement in the cluster development regulations, again, we went over this in February, but a homeowner's agreement is required for cluster proposals. It may be beneficial to modify that section just to clarify that it is that homeowners association that's responsible for all septic maintenance.
So we used to add that line.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause we're already gonna have an
All
HOA.
maintenance that's off the individual lots.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's on the individual lots, the homeowner's responsible.
That's right.
Yes,
A little complicated, a little bit, Holden.
please
Oh,
don't.
thank you, Roy.
Ironworks Estates, my mother did develop, I think everybody agreed, one of the nicest developments in the county.
It is.
There's a sunset clause in HOA out there for 30 years, and we're there. So what happens if that HOA disappears?
That'd be the federal
Somebody's gonna
government
have to pick it up and
superfund.
run with it.
That'd be the federal government superfund.
It goes clear as mud.
Well, it's clear as something else according to the farmer here. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Holman. Yeah, so this, first of all, like I hadn't expected, and I think other members of the public hadn't expected it to come back to you all. So I just checked the agenda today and saw that this, that you all voted on is now kind of coming back with some changes before you all. It was expected the next step would be the fiscal court. So that's just to say that maybe not everyone has had a chance to fully review it. So there were several members of, just for the record, since it's a public hearing, several members of the Conservation District Board, such as Roger Corrals, Debbie Osborne, had wanted, their plan had been to write a letter about some of this stuff and submit it to the fiscal court to be considered. And then when it came up here, they weren't able to get here tonight by the time they heard about it. But so there are some concerns, and I think there is a plan of the Conservation District Board to submit a formal letter about this matter. So it sounds like this was passed by you all, and then there were like a private conversation of the judge executive and a private conversation of WEDCO caused it to come back to here. There might have been other private entities that didn't know they were invited to have a conversation with the staff that might have caused it to be reviewed. That's just something for the record. So specifically, I think what people have some concerns about is the minimum acreage being, it was kind of arbitrarily decided to be 25 acres, but some people are farmers and things do 40 acres. Is 40 acres better? So I think there's some arguments that may be forthcoming about that. And then contiguous, it was kind of decided to make it not all contiguous, but there's some arguments and statements that will need to be made to the fiscal court about contiguous statements. And then just one question about the septic systems, like what is the exact definition of a septic system? It mentioned about the effluent, so like, and I'm not an expert on septic systems, but there's a leach field. So you have the septic tank and then it leaches well out beyond that. So is that clearly defined? So if you have a 1 acre septic system and then they have to add 1 acre to the preserve for that, was that maybe more than 1 acre of the total leach field and effluent? That's just a question to consider. Just this is a public hearing. And then
Dan,
yes.
just so that you do know, this body, the commission, we have no control over septic systems.
Okay.
The health department, that's all laws we have no input on at all.
That would be why, you're talking about private conversations, that's why they were making those
Exactly.
phone
I mean,
calls.
that's
not
appropriate
for you
to
to
talk
imply
about
that it was a
that.
private conversation, that was such BS.
Right.
I mean, you're calling them out like they're just hiding
Well, I'm
something
just
like
no,
that.
I'm not- I
No, that's
didn't mean it
exactly
like
how you
that.
said it, and I take affront to that. You say like something's going on, and nothing's going on. They make those questions because they need information, and we need that information.
Right.
Now, if
No,
you want
it's
to sit in on
appropriate
information,
to
good
talk
luck
about
with that,
that.
you know, you can try that, but
Yeah.
don't come in, I don't appreciate that. I love oversight. I'm all about oversight, but that's too far.
Okay, right.
All right.
Just the expectation was the next step that would.
And it still is, it goes back to fiscal
Yeah,
court, right?
Yeah.
But it's come,
Yeah,
it
so
came
it's
back
still
here.
doing
It
that.
wasn't expected to come back here. So it wasn't.
That's called thoroughness.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's what that's
Okay,
called.
I'm
It's
not,
called
I'm not
thorough.
arguing with that's okay. This is a public hearing, so just statements for the public record, in case there's further conversation, to maybe, and then one other question, so the math of all this, once I, for example, haven't had a chance to fully understand all of the math of all of this. I have a basic idea. But it seems like you could have half-acre lots, you can have 1 acre lots, up to 2 acre lots is a maximum, and then it was stated at the last meeting that you could include 5 acre and above lots as part of, because the conversation came up about different kinds of agriculture. So it was stated anything above 5 acres you could also have in here, but it seems like there's no way to have a 3 acre lot or a 4 acre lot. You can have any size acre lot you want, except for 3 and 4 acre lots. It seems like the math doesn't allow that. It's just something to raise a question about for maybe the future. Okay, thank you.
Are there anyone else? Close the public hearing. Now we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion go back and find this number for this. Is this the agenda? So we just have to make a motion to approve
This,
these?
this is just the accessory
Okay.
dwelling unit.
Yeah. I'll make the motion to accept the accessory dwelling unit cluster development regulations.
And that would be, by the way, to then recommend it to
To
the
the
proper,
fiscal court.
yeah, legislative body, yes.
That's my motion. And I also have to say, I appreciate all the work that you all put into this, along with you all, also the people in the community. I mean, this was a lot of work, and a lot of cross-functional groups of people throughout the community. And you need to be saluted for that you went above and beyond to make sure we listened to everyone, and you reached out thoroughly to the community. And you all continue to exemplify that at other meetings that you have, and I appreciate you doing that.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Jesse.
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Adair. Mr. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
No.
Mr. Stone,
Yes, I guess. It's hard.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Adair.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion carries. Okay.
With that.
No, that's called fiscal court.
Right.
And we'll open the cluster development regulations.
That's everything we just talked about.
That's okay.
I'd be happy to go back over it.
Never mind, sorry. So we need to change that from,
We're done.
okay, make that all one?
If I could make a recommendation, actually, we should specify for the cluster that to change the septic reserve or preserve, whatever that language I had, to separate, septic repair area. And so that would be the one recommendation of staff.
Wasn't there another line we were going to add about the second? But
And then, yes, and then for the HOAs, to require the HOA to manage any off-site septic or be responsible for improvements or maintenance of any off-site septic infrastructure.
Oh, the one at Coleridge, the HOA actually owns it, they should do it, it's out there on it, so. It's in the green area.
Do we have to go back and, what do we do, Charlie? We've already voted on that. Do we have to go back?
Add all
and
this
an
in?
amendment, or?
How about we have
Supposed to
a
be two
motion to amend to include those two
I
points?
motion to amend and include what we just discussed.
Yeah, second.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jesse, second by Mr. Green to amend.
We want
Yep.
to say, we want to say what we're going to amend it, right? Here's what we-
Well, we'll have a hold and repeat
We're ready for
that.
that, okay.
Plus the
So the amendment
HOA.
was to Section E of the Rural Cluster Regulations, DOTA, changing the language to be the final plat for any cluster development must depict the area of all septic system installations as well as a 100% septic repair area. And then separately was to amend Section BB to say a homeowner's agreement is required for cluster proposals. Included in that agreement must be language specific to the repair and maintenance of any shared septic infrastructure. Those were the two amendments.
That was B, as in boy.
Boy.
Okay.
Okay. Now we'll go to personnel.
Close the
We
hearing.
got close, no, not close, but we made that motion to do
At
that.
the motion, did we get a second on the,
Yeah,
on
we got a
that motion?
second, so we got to vote on the motion that we added, right, or we're done?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we have a vote?
You have
No, we didn't have a vote.
Haven't voted.
Yeah, but,
We had to
that's what
vote
I'm saying. Have we had the vote on
We
the
had to vote on the
amendment?
amendment.
We
still
had
gotta
to
vote on
vote
the
on the
amendment.
Oh, okay, we need to have that.
Yeah.
Either way, the public hearing's already closed.
Yeah, we have to vote on the amendment, we just,
Yeah, the amendment to that original approval.
yes,
And we had a motion by Mr. Jesse and a second by Mr. Green.
then we need to vote on it.
Now, okay. Mr. Black,
Yes.
Mr. Jesse,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
I voted no first, so I guess I'll vote no this time.
Consistency.
We sure could say.
You're a hard-headed man, you know that.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Adair.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion carries. Amendment carries. Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is one I'm very happy to present for. So this is a personnel matter. Ms. Toshi Tucson has been with her office for just slightly over 6 months, and she's been incredible. She's primarily worked with the Board of Adjustment thus far, but I would not, actually, I believe she'll be coming in front of you at the next Planning Commission meeting. It'll be her first formal presentation. Toshi's understanding of city planning and urban development is second to none. And in particular, I'd like to compliment her. She is an urban designer as well. And so a lot of the graphics that we've used here tonight and in some of her other projects, she's helped put together and really been the lead on. And so with that, I would like to recommend that Toshi come on as with full-time status, permanent status.
Or do you need us to say we accept that?
Yes.
Do I need to make that a motion?
Toshi, would you like a motion?
Let's make it official.
Yes. I'll make that a motion that she's full-time status.
All second.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Jesse, a second by Mr. Black to make Toshi a full-time employee.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All in favor, then?
All in favor?
Aye.
What are you gonna do, David?
I'm gonna say yes. Once tonight.
Okay.
Everybody vote.
2 minutes.
Next on the agenda is a response to a City of Georgetown Planning and Zoning Committee Advisory Committee memo. As you're aware, we recently had a joint work session with the Georgetown City Council. In that joint work session, a large part of the discussion centered around a memo created by a City Council committee related to the review of our zoning ordinances. Coming out of that work session, we were asked to basically, as a body, send a response back to them. And so in your packet is the draft version that staff had prepared. In that, we basically went and prioritized the recommendations that we had received from the City of Georgetown, as well as then answered approximately 28 questions from the city council members on that committee as they relate to really policy, but also just planning generally in our community. What I've done is, and following the work session, I was requested to make one change, and so, Mr. Jesse, that's what I've done here. And I'm going to read to you, this is on page 7. Previously, the answer to what can the city do to better be prepared or be better prepared for proposed manufactured housing developments, ADUs, and RV parks in the future, that answer had ended after the second sentence. And so what I'm proposing is to add an additional sentence, and I'll read the entirety of the response here. The city should review existing standards for mobile home and RV developments and ensure they reflect the community's needs. Additionally, the city should direct the Planning Commission to begin drafting an ADU ordinance specific to Georgetown. Well timed, we just voted again on ADUs for Scott County. Then, at the direction of Mr. Jesse and his comments at the work session, I've added the following sentence. The city could also independently or in conjunction with the Planning Commission begin research into the integration of other non-traditional housing types, i.e. tiny homes, yurts, pallet homes, shipping container structures, and the like, into the community. And so what I've done is I've taken the draft, yes,
I've since done some research at other communities about some of the wording. I just want to, this may be over the mark, but I just want to say it. But the language in some other towns, the size of homes is what they put in their language.
okay.
So they add tiny homes and they also say small homes, which would be from 400 to 1,200 square feet, just to make sure within our rules and regulations in the city limits of Georgetown that we encompass different types of housing.
Yeah, and so I will assure you, our current zoning ordinance makes no discrimination against smaller structures.
Okay, very good. And we have a city council member here, so hopefully,
What I would like to do
different types of housing.
is I've taken off the draft section of the document that you guys have. I believe, coming out of the work session, the intent is for this body to communicate directly to the city council. And so if this draft reflects the values of this commission, what I would ask is for you guys to sign this so that I can forward this on to the city of Georgetown. However, if there are other things that you would like to see changed, I'd be more than happy to make corrections and send it out, for some other signature method. But if you guys are happy with it tonight, I hand this to something for you guys to consider. And then if I can answer any other questions, I'd be happy to do that as well.
I got one for you, Holden.
Yep.
On page 2.3, discussing form-based codes. Seems like a sufficient response, could serve to help preserve community character and protect historic structures, things of that nature. Are there any hurdles to us moving towards that? And I guess my question is, would we need to shift fully from, I think it's Euclidean zoning or whatever our current system is, to form-based, or can we integrate that on a case-by-case basis? Hey, for this area development plan, we're going to implement a form-based code to determine the design aesthetics and the architectural materials. Is that possible on a case-by-case basis? I guess I'm curious, what would the steps be to get to that point?
So what I would say is already within our zoning ordinance, we have certain zones that have additional development standards or design guidelines that are required. So really what I look at moving forward is some sort of hybrid system. Within the comprehensive plan, we specifically indicate that we would like design guidelines for the gateways into our community.
Sure.
One of the easiest ways to accomplish that is through form-based codes. And so I don't imagine a full-cell shift to simply form-based codes.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, I would not shy away from, in cooperation with the city, identifying areas where maybe that is what makes the most sense.
Sure.
I would ask, though, if possible, I did some reading on that this week in anticipation of this. There's a whole lot of ambiguity, even in documents from organizations fully espousing it. Something that was really ridiculous to read. It was just so ambiguous. I mean, you can almost picture seeing, here's the industrial and all this stuff right there together, but the facades are marvelous and integrated. That really seems absurd, at least in the extreme. So I'm just simply suggesting, as we go, well, not as we go in that direction, as we look at that direction, we'll need a whole lot of education.
Yep.
Because there has to be more to it than the documents I came across yesterday.
Yeah, obviously, the desire of putting this on here is to help protect community character. I'll go on a limb here and say we don't want heavy industrial use downtown if it looks like it fits, because that use, agreed.
Yeah, you put a drugstore sign up and you can have a Body Works in there.
Yeah.
Well, that's absurd, yeah.
And so, again, right now, we haven't drafted any draft ordinances for this. Rather, again, this is to express the desire to pursue something. But yes, total form-based code, it's the Wild West. You really, if it fits the area as far as it looks, then you can basically have whatever use you want. Yeah. But again, if you want the area to look a certain way, it's a very effective tool.
But you can still do that with some Euclidean zoning. You just have a character that you've adopted and you carried that along. So.
Holden, at what point will we need to specify, in this hypothetical, that we would impose a sort of form-based standard? Would that be before any sort of application? Would that be sort of like a rezoning or?
No.
Okay.
So Ideally, the way this would go about is following this response back to the city council, is some sort of joint work committee will be formed out of members. Again, this is all hypothetical, we can't tell the city of Georgetown what to do. But we'll form some sort of working group between the city council, this body, as well as members of the public. They begin systematically going through our existing ordinance and finding those areas for improvement. Where appropriate, we would then recommend the addition of form-based regulations into the code. And so this would not be on a case-by-case. We'd identify it up front in advance. It could be an overlay, or it could be a more traditional zone.
Okay.
We could approach it from either side. What I would say, though, on top of all the conversation we had, and I made mention of this at the joint work session, is the Kentucky legislature was considering and has now passed Senate Bill 9, which grants the city of Georgetown the ability to create what are called housing districts or housing development areas. And inside of that, there's a lot more to it, but it is essentially our plan unit development procedures cranked up to the max to allow great flexibility. That would be, in my interpretation of the state statute, that would give them kind of the ability to work those kind of developments and find what they want. And so a lot of the work that we're going to do will be, I think, supplemented by a lot of the work that the state is doing at the same time.
And that is simply to encourage more housing, correct?
So that was after 2 years of working with the Kentucky House, it was a housing task force. That legislation was brought forward, and then, as I said, it was recently passed.
What's they gonna do in the rural areas that don't have zoning? What's they gonna do in the rural areas that don't have zoning?
So again, because this is specific to the city's authority to implement these plans, I believe it would just be underneath that city's authority to regulate themselves, the police authority, police powers.
More types of housing.
Okay, any other questions about this memo in response?
One more, Holden. The discussion of having the urban services boundary reduced to ordinance. First off, what would be the need of that, since we've had an urban services boundary since '58? We've never had conflicts, we've never had a lawsuit, we've never had it questioned. We've simply come up then after 5 or so years for the comp plan review, made adjustments, and then kept going. If we do this by ordinance, then we do exactly what we've always done, but then we've got to have an ordinance. Then later on, we've got to have amended ordinances, which then make it a whole lot more difficult to then have, the citizen review and all that sort of thing to make adjustments, because we then got to go back and do, because basically that puts it in, not concrete, but a very hard version. Well,
yeah.
Where there's no problem, why are we fixing it?
Well, so that was driven out of a lot of conversation with several members of the city council.
And I also don't know of any other places, there probably are some, I guess, but I've not heard of any that do this by ordinance. It's all done by comp plan.
I think Fayette is the only
Oh,
one.
God, I don't want any part of that. Just read their ordinance, and oh my gosh, just read their ordinance.
And so, yeah, again, will be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
What was expressed to me is right now, and again, I cannot speak on behalf of the city council, but they feel like they do not have ownership over that determination. And in matters of annexation, when something has been identified within the urban service boundary, and we recommend approval based on that urban service boundary, and it goes to the city, they've basically felt that we had imposed that upon them. Is that correct? I would disagree.
Well, of course
However,
It's all gone to them ahead of time. In advance, ahead of time.
And so what I think was anticipated by that action would be the reverse of what we've done currently, which is where we take the future land use map and then go to them and then they endorse it. Rather, instead, they would vote on this ordinance to establish the urban service boundary. And then we would bring that back to then shape the future land use map around their defined areas. Not the zones or future uses within it, but that boundary defining where the city believes that they can provide those urban services to.
I see your wife dressed you good.
It is backwards of everything else we do, but again, that's, I think, going to be a large part of the
But
conversation.
that input as to where services go and needs all of that's supposed to be done anyway, and then fed into the comp plan update each time.
And in our response to them, I say exactly that. We already provide that information.
Excellent. Okay.
That's a good point you made. Don't forget Fayette County would love to have Scott County.
Yeah.
We're waiting to sign.
Yeah.
Did they pass down?
I'll leave that to your signatures,
Everybody gonna sign that?
only if you support it.
Where did we sign? I guess we just signed that.
Are we done now? We adjourn?
Staff has nothing further.
I make a motion we adjourn. Can you adjourn us, Karen?
Second, adjourn us,
Adjourn.
Chairman.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.